This is Rise. Let's lock in with the goal of changing one life at a time. Yours. Together, let us rise up, inspire, strengthen, and elevate our minds. It's time to rise on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, my name is Dr. Saran Heron, and welcome to Rise. Today, we're going to talk about how to disagree with people without disrespecting them. My guest today is Philip Blackett, who's an author, consultant, entrepreneur, who previously worked with FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Chick-Fil-A. He got his Master's of Divinity degree from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, his MBA from Harvard Business School, and his bachelor's degree majoring in political science and economics from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, author of the book, Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those You Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. He is here to talk about how to disagree with people without disrespecting them. He will share his personal experience, discuss his 5 steps principles, and help you to do the same without hurting others. Philip Blackett, welcome to Rise here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heron. I'm excited to be here with you.
It's my pleasure to have you here. Now, you hold an MBA. Why did you pick that major?
Well, MBA came after college, right? So
Right.
I went to college to major in political science and economics. And when I was a student, an advisor of mine told me, if you understand politics and economics, Philip, you understand how a country works.
Right.
And so if you add business and investment afterwards, you understand how the world works. And so for me, I thought that was a great way to learn. And at that time, before I went to business school, I had worked in corporate America. I worked on Wall Street in New York City for a little bit. And I realized that for me to get ahead or get to the next level for my career, I had to go back to school. And so I thought that going back to business school to get my MBA, that would be helpful there.
Wonderful. That's great advice for those who are listening and thinking about an MBA. Now, we're going to talk about your new book. So let's get into the title of your book, which is very relatable. Tell us about the title of your book and how you came up with the title of your book.
Yeah, so the title is Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. And so the title and subtitle are significant because, one, disagree without disrespect, disagreement is not a new thing for us. And one person told me, relationships don't often break up because of disagreement. However, they do break up often because of disrespect.
Right.
So one of the thoughts that came in my head was, okay, if disagreement is going to happen in any relationship we have, whether it's with our significant other, our friend, our mom, our kids, our friends, our colleagues at work, how can we do it in a way that is not disrespectful? And so the subtitle, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You, that's significant because, oftentimes the question becomes, okay, how do we disagree? And oftentimes it's because two people think differently from one another. They may come from different beliefs, or they may actually vote differently.
Right.
And so one of the common misconceptions about this book is that this is strictly a political book because there's the word vote in it. And I would surmise is that that's actually not necessarily the case. It's dealing with disagreements you have in any interpersonal relationship, whether it's in the living room, the boardroom, the classroom. You're going to come across people that, hard to believe, you will not agree 100% on everything.
I think we all could relate to that.
Exactly. And it's not that being like, oh my gosh, that I never knew that. It's more so, okay, if we just put that aside and everyone agrees, we're going to come across people, guarantee we're not all we're going to agree on everything with. Then the question becomes, okay, how do we manage and build these relationships with people that we don't see eye to eye on?
Now, as a culture, we, like you mentioned, we need to understand that we could have a conversation without being nasty, as we call it. What Talk to me about that without being nasty, because a lot of people may define disrespect as different ways, which I don't think there's a perfect definition for disrespect because it comes in various forms. But speak to me about, not being nasty.
Yeah, I don't think we live in a society that thrives off of hurting one another or being nasty to one another, or we're like, wanting to self-inflict pain and punishment on ourselves for the joy of it. So I think, that makes me think we don't like to necessarily get into conversations that get into the point where we're being disrespected, we're being nasty, we're being rude to. That's not something we normally look for, right? It's not like we wake up in the morning like,
Absolutely
who
not.
can I be rude today with,
Yes.
or who can be rude to me?
Yes.
I love that. That's what I want out of my day today.
You wonder, though, it makes you wonder if people do that.
Well, on the flip side, right, Dr. Ron, it's this definitely a place where ego plays a role here.
Yes.
Where many people have a instinct, a yearning to show that they're right to somebody and to prove that somebody else is wrong. They may stake it their whole existence or who they are as a person, identity wise, that I have to prove myself right against this person, or otherwise this day is a failure. But what I would say regarding the nasty part is, like, I'm thinking I don't want to get involved in a conversation with somebody that quickly devolves into name calling. You're calling me outside of my name. You're trying to curse me out. You're trying to embarrass me. Yeah. It might get into actual physicality as a result as well. Very uncomfortable, very threatening. These are the things I associate with nasty. There's clearly a spectrum here that I just want to avoid even the prospect of getting to the first level of nastiness in our conversations.
Now, you've been married for 8 years, and for those individuals who've been married and may be wondering, so you agree with your wife on everything? Speak to us about that, because I'm sure a lot of people have a misconception that just because you're married doesn't mean you agree with everything. Speak to us a little bit about that.
Right. And that's kind of an illustration of what I shared before, right? Like, you actually are not going to come across anybody that you agree with on everything. And if that was the case, that for me and my wife to be married 8 years going forward, that we had to agree on everything, we frankly would not have made it past the honeymoon stage. And I would argue maybe not even to the wedding itself, because the wedding planning can be quite a lot of back and forth negotiation, right? And so just off that disagreement in there, we might not have made it. So, yeah, I think that in the most intimate and most close of relationships, if you can still be together in spite of you not agreeing on everything, then what takeaways and lessons can we take away from that and be able to apply to all our other relationships that don't comprise of us marrying somebody?
Right. Now, your book was actually inspired. You were at a family gathering. I'll let you go ahead and share that. Bring us back to that moment in time with your family member that really was your fuel, that, you wanted to write this book and stress the importance of, again, we're talking about being respectful as well as being able to still express yourself. So bring us back to that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the 4th of July last year. So my family invited my sister's family, so her husband, and her kids, my niece and nephew, and then also my mother. And so the adults were in the living room, and my sister and I were having a conversation on a topic that, quite frankly, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about. All I know is that we were on opposite ends of the spectrum on this particular issue. And so as we were engaging in this discussion, my mother jumps in, in which I would have thought, okay, are you going to pick sides? Which one are you going to be with me or with my sister?
Right.
And she's like, neither. We're not going to have this conversation right now. And I was like, why? And to paraphrase, it was something along the lines of, listen, we got fireworks coming on later tonight, 4th of July. I have no interest in seeing any fireworks happening in this living room right now. So while I appreciate in retrospect the intent behind what my mother was trying to do, which was basically to preserve the peace between family members so we could have a family memory that we look back on fondly. The impact of it was a lost opportunity. And I mean a lost opportunity in terms of a lost opportunity for my sister and I to get to know each other better, for me to share something that meant a lot to me, for me to talk openly and vulnerably in front of to her and vice versa, because I do believe, and you might agree with me here, that in the age of social media, smartphones, texting, and that sort of thing, some conversations are better had face to face.
Absolutely agree with you. We tend to do them via text, though, but you're absolutely correct.
And the challenge with that, though, too, is text messaging, for example, that only counts for like 5% of communication. It literally is dealing with words, and our best compensation for that is to add emojis every now and then. But that still doesn't convey the full communication as opposed to in person, where you have not only the words you speak, but also the tonality of your words spoken, and also, most importantly, your body language. So the vast majority of communication is avoided because you're going off of text messaging. And so that was one where I was thinking in retrospect of that event, didn't have that conversation with my sister. And I said, man, if that happened to me, I wonder how many other people are going through something similar, where they have something that's important to them. They want to share with somebody they care about, but for some reason, out of fear of the possibility of disagreeing with someone and what that could lead into, we stay on the surface. We don't dig deeper, and we don't have those type of deeper, more intimate conversations that improve the quality of our relationships, which also play a factor in improving the quality of our lives. And so that's what got me to thinking of a framework that could help with that. And that's what got me to writing this book.
You are listening to Rise on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Saran Heron, and today we're talking to Philip Blackett, who's an author, consultant, entrepreneur who previously has worked with FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Chick-Fil-A. He got his Master's of Divinity degree from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, his MBA from Harvard Business School, and his bachelor degree major in political science and economics from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, author of the book Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. He is here to talk about how to disagree with people without disrespecting them. He will share his personal experience, discuss his 5-step principles, and help you to do the same without hurting others. Now, Philip, we've been talking, and I just want us to get into your 5-step. You have a 5-step program. Speak to us about the steps and why each is important.
Absolutely. So I think the first step to being able to disagree without disrespect is step number 1, separate the idea or belief from the identity of the believer. And the reason why that's important is that oftentimes, depending on the person we talk to, the issue at hand, we may come across somebody that the issue that we're talking about, they're so intertwined with that issue that it becomes who they are. And so it's challenging to talk about that issue, because to talk about that issue, it almost comes off like you're talking about them. Or if you disagree or criticize that idea or belief, they may take it as if you are criticizing who they are or hating on them, which means that oftentimes that person will likely take it personal. They may get defensive. They may build up a wall in some sort to protect themselves, to save face, to preserve their ego. And they may even become aggressive towards you because of what's going on. And simply, you were just talking about the issue at hand. So that's step 1. Step number 2 is you can disagree with the idea or belief and still respect and love the believer. So this is a take from what I've learned in church, where we're called to hate the sin, yet love the sinner, right, where 2 things can be true. I can love you and I can disagree with what you just said.
Absolutely.
Because oftentimes many of us live by the lie that to love me, you have to agree with me and you have to affirm me.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily the case. That was something my mother had to teach me growing up. And I find a lot of people that we have to teach that same lesson to, because it's not a clear, direct correlation that way. In contrast, it's more of a lesson to learn that it's actually possible to disagree with someone's views and still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship. So once you're able to do those first two, you set the groundwork, the setting for actually to have a debate. Step 3 is you actually debate the issue at hand based on its merit. And what do I mean by merits? What I mean by merit is, what are the facts? What's the logic, the research, the analysis, the performance, the results, the reviews? Try to keep it as objective as you possibly can. Make it as close to an apples to apples comparison.
Right.
Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to get involved in name calling.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that once you get in name calling, the debate is over.
Yes, it's not going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. And at the same time, you want to actively listen to the other person and understand from his or her point of view. And you don't want to get involved with any over dramatic, over emotional responses, because oftentimes that can set you aback where you're trying to figure out, where do I go from here? Because now I feel tempted to try to find some Kleenex to wipe some tears because I simply just said, I disagree with you.
And we know that's so true.
Exactly. And so once you actually have that debate, step 4 is we basically do something that we did when we were young playing sports. At the end of the game, win or lose, what did we do as a team at the end of the athletic contest? We lined up, we shook hands, and we said, good game. Good sportsmanship was important back then when we were young, and good sportsmanship is also important and needed when we're adults as well, because no one likes a sore loser and no one likes a sore winner. So regardless if I come to your side of agreement or vice versa, or if we agree to disagree, or some third alternative comes up as a result of us actually having this conversation, regardless of which, we can still be good sports about it. And that leads into the last step, step 5, where we can then respect and appreciate the person we just debated with. And even if we disagree, ultimately still, we can appreciate that as preserving diversity of thought. But more importantly, let's keep the door open for continued conversation and dialogue so we can build on the relationship, because hopefully we have the mindset of our relationship between us is more important than who's right and who's wrong.
Now we're going to get into what we call, you call cancel the culture, as you call it, and just being able to take criticism. Speak to me about canceling the culture. As you know, you mentioned earlier, the texting, the face-to-face conversations that we no longer have, and we've replaced them with other types of communication. Speak to how can we cancel that type of culture where we're building back the relationships, as you made reference to, sportsmanship and having those behaviors still, that sometimes we don't have those behaviors.
Yeah, I think part of it is understanding that, hey, we have to do our part to help disarm people and make others feel comfortable and safe to have conversations, even if they're tough. And one of the best ways to do that is to be able to do step number 2, which is help people understand that, hey, we may have a difficult conversation up here, or we may have some differences of opinions, and I still respect you as my friend.
Right. Now,
I still love you as my child or as my significant other.
yes.
Like, we can still have a setting where we can just talk and not resort to feeling on edge or on thin ice, saying if I say something and it's not exactly the way the other person wants it, then my whole friendship is in jeopardy.
And having to worry about that. Now, we have college students who may be listening today, and other audience who are listening, of course. But those who are going through those tough topics, I want you to speak to us on how we could better navigate those conversations that may be tough, whether they're political or just disagreements, as we've been talking about, having to remain respectful, and it's okay to disagree.
Right. So I think one of the things is ask yourself the question, what is my main objective about having this conversation? Is it more so I want this as a proving ground to show that I'm right, that my way of looking at it is superior than yours? Or is it a way for me to get to know you better? Know the perspective you have. What's the backstory? Why is this particular viewpoint so important to you? Is this more of a conviction, or is there wiggle room here? And being able to do that vice versa, that person can get to know you and understand your backstory, your perspective, and why it's important to you. So if this is more of an information sharing exercise rather than our humble, feeble attempt to persuade, quote unquote, somebody into doing something different from what they wanted to do before, then I think that helps, especially with college students, because you're in a place that you're here to learn. And that goes beyond the textbooks you read and the notes and lectures that your professor teaches. You can also learn from each other.
You are listening to Rise on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Saran Heron, and today we're talking to Philip Blackett, who is an author, consultant, entrepreneur who previously has worked with FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Chick-Fil-A. He got his Master's of Divinity degree from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, his MBA from Harvard Business School, and his bachelor degree majoring in political science and economics from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He is the author of the book Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. He is here to talk about how to disagree with people without disrespect them. He will share his personal experience, discuss his 5-step principle, and help you do the same without hurting others. Now, Philip, as we've been talking, for our listeners who are interested in your book and want to get connected with you, how could they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can get my book, Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. It's available on Amazon. So you can go by the book title, or you can look it up by my name, Philip Blackett, Philip Blackett. Or you can also connect with me either on my website, philipblackett.com, or on social media. Just look up my name, Philip Blackett, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
And lastly, I just want you to, what is the message you hope that the listeners today learn from you today, based on your experience, based on the insight you've also learned in terms of disagreeing with people? What is something that you want to leave with our listeners to just encourage them as well?
It's actually possible to disagree with someone's views and still be respectful and loving of them in a healthy relationship. The biggest thing that comes off when I think about diversity is that diversity goes beyond what you see on the outside. Diversity includes diversity of thought. But if we don't provide a setting where we can learn from others, even if they have different viewpoints, we won't be able to benefit from such diversity we have amongst each other.
Now, I appreciate you taking time out to come on the program to speak with us. I hope that our listeners were able to take a great deal from especially those 5 detailed steps that we could begin to practice. Now, I just want to lastly talk about quickly, what are the main challenges that you find for those individuals who are listening that is hard for others to move forward?
So I think one of the main challenges comes up that what I teach in this book is not regularly and frequently being practiced and taught where we get our news and where we get our information. So whether it's news programs, social media, how we go about in the conversations in the classroom, at home, we don't share this type of framework in how we approach one another. And so we are what we see. Oftentimes, it's hard to be what we can't see. And so if you're seeing a bunch of disagreements where people are thriving off of criticizing, canceling, or cursing out one another to get likes and shares and comments, and then we start to think maybe we should do the same thing. So just because everyone else is doing it, that does not make it right.
Thank you, Philip, for being here again.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'm Dr. Saran Heron. I hope you were able to learn something that you too can apply in your life today. Despite the society we live in, we must always have grace towards one another. We all are not perfect, but let's learn to accept what we are not going to always agree on everything. But let us practice compassion, understanding, and still show each other love. Knowing disagreeing does not mean you don't love a person anymore, but let us all be mindful that it's okay to not agree and still be okay with each other. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Rise, available wherever you listen to podcasts, and always right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.